Hello and welcome to the Blockade Runner podcast number 230. My name is John. Joining me is Ryan.
Hello, good
Hello, Ryan.
afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. It's fall. Ryan is wearing his
Mm-hmm.
what do you call those sweaters? I wear them all the time. I can't believe
Cardigan.
cardigan. Yeah.
It's a cardigan. Yeah, it is cardigan weather here in Denver today,
Yeah, yeah,
which
yeah.
is
Um
nice. It's a nice change.
mhm. Yeah, it's pretty much cardigan weather over here in Rockford, Illinois as well. It's also Andor season, Ryan, and
Mm-hmm.
we are both loving this show Andor. It came out Wednesday. We're recording Sunday, so all of your favorite podcasts have already posted their Andor episodes 1 through 3 um, shows, and we're a little
Mm-hmm.
tardy to the party. I have not listened to any of my favorite podcasts Andor shows because I just want to come into this one without anybody else's ideas bouncing around in my head. But I do have ideas about Andor, and I want to
Mm-hmm.
share them. So this entire episode will be about the first 3 episodes of Andor. Um, so yeah, I think we're going to kick it off by just kind of sharing our um, impressions of the show, sort of zoomed out overall opinion of the show. Which spoilers, it's extremely good. That's both of our opinion, but we'll talk about it in more detail. And
Mm-hmm.
then we're going to discuss characters a little bit because I feel like the show is extremely character focused, and that is what is the most interesting element of the show to me. So we're gonna, rather than kind of go episode by episode and break down scene by scene or something like that, we're going to talk characters in the second part of the show, and then maybe if we have any lingering questions like what is Prelox Morgana or whatever, Ryan, who do they work for, things like that, maybe we'll talk about that a little bit
Mm-hmm.
at the end if we have time. So, why don't we kick it off and talk about our impressions of the show? Ryan, why don't you start? Tell me, what do you think about this show Andor we've been waiting years to see?
Yeah, it was definitely a show that we've been anticipating in the sense that like we knew it was coming. And it's a cool character, but it was also kind of a surprise, and maybe not what we kind of expected from the the new the new slate of live action Disney things. um and yeah, it's so like I think my excitement for it has like just started kind of increasing this year. I wouldn't say like in I mean 2020 2021, I think there was like kind of we would talk and be like, is that show still happening? Like, is especially after like Mandalorian blew up, and it seemed like that was the direction all the live action Star Wars stuff was going in. It's like, is this Andor thing still gonna happen? Like it feels like it doesn't really fit with um what was happening at the time. And um turns out it doesn't really fit in the kind of worldview of like modern Disney Star Wars. And I think that is a very good thing, because this show is very different than other Disney Star Wars. I mean, it's even like different than Rogue One, honestly. Like, there's nothing really comparable, I think, in this modern era of Star Wars, um, like to the kind of feel of the show, and also the level of quality. And yeah, so it's very different, and I think that is very good, um, because I am incredibly impressed by this show, and I'm very, very invested in the show
Yeah.
and the characters.
Yeah, I agree that it's very, very different. And I think that's also a really good thing. I feel like it is, how do I put this? I think it's different. justifiably different though, or it's different because it needs to be different because of what it is. And so
Mhm.
there's been a lot of, I mean, of course there always is, but there's been a lot of discussion in the last few days about, comparing Andor to other um, Disney Plus Star Wars TV. And it's weird because, like, in 1 minute, I'll be saying, like, this is better than anything that, Star Wars has done on Disney Plus TV, just in terms of, like, how incredible the writing is, how incredible the acting is. Like, it's a cut above everything. And I keep saying, like, this is the best thing I've seen in terms of Star Wars, on Disney Plus, and it is. But then on the other hand, I'm like, well, it's kind of weird to compare it to like the other Star Wars Disney Plus shows to a certain extent, also because it's just like not at all trying to do what those other shows do. And I think it's by design, and also by because of the nature of like what this story is and what kind of story they're aiming to tell. And all those things are really positive, but and I'm really happy about that. But also, it's just I just feel like this show is so different, not just because it was like, oh, well, the people who sat down and made Obi-Wan, or the people who like came together to make Mandalorian, they didn't feel like making something different, and these guys did. Um, I mean, there's something to that, but at the same time, it's like, I don't think the Mandalorian should have been like Andor. I don't think the Obi-Wan Kenobi show should have been like Andor. I think that,
Mhm.
like the sort of mission statement of this show, the point of this show, the exigence of this show, the reason this show exists, it necessitates like it being this tone and this style and this kind of Star Wars story. So I'm thrilled about that. I think it's fantastic, and like, we'll see where I land with it when it's all over. But like, as of now, yeah, I think this is the highest quality Star Wars show that Disney Plus has put out. But also, I don't it's not like I want the other shows to feel like this or be like this. I think it's good that this show is different. It's nice to get something different. Also, I think if you're going to tell this story, this is the way you should tell this story. You shouldn't tell it in
Mhm.
this like elevated space fantasy whiz bam pow kind of style that other Star Wars projects are done in. But I also don't think like, oh well, now this is what every Star Wars thing should be. It should always be hyper serious like this. And like, I think I'm just really happy with what this show is, and I think this
Mhm.
is what this show needs to be. It's not what every Star Wars thing needs to be. So most of the time when you compare one thing to another, it's not all that useful. You know what I mean? But we still do it. I mean, I do it constantly, but
Mhm.
I just feel like this show, like the discussion should be about like how great this show is, how impressive it is, and it is surprisingly smart and impressive, and all that stuff is good. But I'm already kind of like tired of comparing it to the other shows that are out there in Star Wars land. I don't think every Marvel show. I don't even watch Marvel shows, but I don't think every Marvel show should be WandaVision. So
Right, right. But I do think that the show makes like a strong case for like also Star Wars can be this. So like,
yeah,
hey, this is another option. You
yeah,
know, like obviously not all Star Wars is going to be this going forward. It's not like this is going to be um the kind of like a sea change for the franchise because I think I mean honestly like the biggest reason is it kind of lacks marketability in like a very mainstream way which Star Wars is a mainstream product that like like 6-year-old kids wear Grogu shirts and like everyone knows the characters and you have like you wouldn't make a Lego Andor video game. Um, like I don't
and
think that would.
Andor's coming to Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga as a DLC character. But yes, I see what you mean. You wouldn't
Yeah,
make, yeah.
like you wouldn't make like a game with that tone, like based on this story. Like you wouldn't adapt this story in that way. Like, and so I
I
don't
have I have
think.
a great
Mm,
Oh, I was just going to say I have a great example of it not being very marketable, which is that I can't get anyone else that lives with me to watch it. You know, so
hmm
they won't watch it. But and the sad part is they watched like the first half hour of the first episode and didn't finish the first episode, and were like, I don't want to watch that anymore. And so, um, yeah, they were all like, nothing's happening. I don't want to watch this. And I was like, Real annoyed, but that happened. So
Yeah.
the youngest one, ironically, the youngest one, I he still says he wants to watch it, but just not that night. But the adult and pre-adult in my home are like, nah, not watching it. So, and I keep telling him like, oh, like, cause they pieced out after like 2/3 of the first episode. Then I like stayed on the couch and watched the next two, and afterwards I was like, oh my God, you guys, like, this is of an unbelievable quality. It is outrageously good. And they're like, you say that about every Star Wars thing. And I'm like, well, yeah, and I always mean it too, but
Ooh.
like I mean it in a different way this time. I mean it in a different way this time. It's really
Uh-huh.
good. So
Boy Who Cried Wolf.
I didn't. I didn't
Uh,
cry wolf. It was true. They keep telling me that I said that about Book of Boba Fett, and I'm like, I think I said a lot of things about Book of Boba Fett. I doubt that's what I said. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
but I'm
Yeah,
sure
I
I.
don't.
But pretty much any other Star Wars live action, I'm sure I said. So,
Yeah.
anyways, it's not as
Well,
marketable. You're right. So,
yeah, and but I think like it's kind of, the same things I've been reiterating for I guess like years, but more so recently because I think this show has kind of necessitated the conversation is like talking about the buffet that Star Wars is, and like you don't you don't go to a buffet and eat an equal amount of every single item that's there and enjoy it that much, like the same amount. There's things that we enjoy more, things that are like, better suited for our palates, personally. And um, yeah, and but I think it's also very good that the Star Wars buffet is not just um, I don't know, mashed potatoes in every single part of the buffet. Like it that there can also be this. Like, and I think again, I was just reading, I sent you this earlier, this the Hollywood Reporter interview with Tony Gilroy, and in that, like, the way he was talking about the show is that, he kind of like wasn't super interested in doing it or doing any more Star Wars, and then um and then uh this might just be like an awesome like boss move. Kathy Kennedy like sent him a pilot that they had kind of been cooking over at Lucasfilms, to for the show, and it was kind like everyone seemed kind of cool on it, and like they sent it to him and he's like, no, no, not at all, and then like he just
mm,
wrote his own. And like
uh huh.
um so he's like, no, this is not right. Like, and he did his own, and then that's what they moved forward with, and then it got him like in the headspace around it and like thinking about it. But the way he makes it sound is like he could make, once like he was going to go forward with the project, that he could make it however he wanted. And he says like, yeah, like I think the volume is cool, but for this kind of, you kind of have to choose, to do are you going to go all in on the volume and get like those, like people with those skills on your crew, or are you going to go like all in on shooting in real sets and everything, and get like and make your crew that way and do your pre-production that way, and like you kind of have to choose one way or another, which I know like Obi-Wan seemed to be kind of like a mix of that, but I think that was also just a smaller show, um just a shorter show as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and so like he was like, "Yep, we're going to do it with real sets, and it's, I think he called it like a we're going to build the show, something along those lines." And he just got the go ahead to do it, and I think um I again, like this is a testament to just the quality of the upper management at Lucasfilm and their like trust in artists and creators that they're not like I don't I don't know if it's cheaper to do everything on the volume or to build sets. Probably it's probably cheaper to to use the volume, I would assume, just because of the costs of like flying people around and like building things, and like yeah, it's like also costs a lot for like digital artists and everything and that technology, but um I would assume it's probably still cheaper at the end of the day. Um
Hmm.
but like just that Gilroy was able to still do it in the way that like made sense for like his vision for the show, and they didn't and it doesn't sound like anyone was like, well, can't you just do this on the volume, like hey, come talk to John Favreau, he'll show you how to do it, like
Yeah.
or like no one tried to push him in that direction. They're just like cool, do do what you need to make your vision happen, and I think
Yeah.
that's just awesome.
Yeah, I wonder what the difference in budgets is, and I don't think we're gonna find out. But I wonder what the difference in budgets is. I think it's for sure like faster to shoot on the volume, and I know that was like a major upside to the volume, in
Hmm.
addition to maybe being more cost efficient. And then I think it also probably depends too on how many sets you have to build, um, versus not right because like if you think about like Mandalorian season, well, in either season of Mandalorian, I think they go to a lot of different. There's an ice planet and there's Navarro and there's just a lot of different places they go and it's like more of a it does have more of a I guess like primarily a western sort of feel but also like that space opera kind of feeling, not to the extent
Hmm.
of a saga movie but still it has that kind of vibe. And then if this is going to be more of a Born Identity or Michael Clayton type movie or something, you know what I mean,
Hmm.
or show where it's less about like, oh my god, can you believe this amazing new planet they went to, and just more of a like so far we haven't seen anything that indicates to me, or very little that would indicate to me that they would need to use the volume just in terms of settings. You know what I mean? Obviously, there's been some cool special effects and stuff, but it just feels like a more contained show, more grounded show. Um, Obviously, in many ways, but like even visually, it just seems much more contained and grounded. And so I feel like there's less need for the volume, as well.
Hmm.
So because I don't know, like I think Mandalorian, it's like they couldn't have done it as nearly as quickly as they did. I don't know about budget; it's probably much cheaper also, but for sure that I don't think they could have done it as quickly as they did it, um, with all the different planets and locations and sort of settings that they included in that show. So,
Yeah, but I also think like that's also like the way that like John Favreau in particular enjoys working. Like he
hmm,
likes digital sets and that sort of thing. Because that's I mean
yeah,
that's
and
why part of the reason he got the gig was because he had all that experience by from using
Iron Man.
the Iron Man and then like live action Jungle Book and Lion King and that stuff.
Yeah, but I think too, like with him being a writer and creator, he writes and creates with that kind of technology in mind. And I'm saying, like, I think Tony Gilroy is the opposite. You know what I mean? I don't think he's thinking about like, man, as he's writing the show, I could do so many wild things in terms of the settings and visuals. And so I think because he's more like this is about these people and their lives, and
Hmm.
it's less about this big epic heroic storytelling kind of space opera thing. I think it's just I'm saying like yeah, I totally agree. Like it's the way Favreau likes to work. It's the way Gilroy likes to work. But I think that seeps into all the different parts of the show too. Not just like which technology are we going to choose. It's also like what kind of stories am I going to write, and what am I going to focus on, and what I want to do with the show. So I think like the the volume definitely is a better fit for the kind of storytelling that John Favreau does, as well as the kind of like production style he wants to work in or whatever.
Mm,
And that seems to be the case for Tony Gilroy too. So,
yeah.
um, which is great. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah. I guess like just other sort of big picture thoughts besides just like how different it is. We're going to talk about this for sure as we get into the characters, but the acting is unbelievable to me. Like the actors are all so good, and I
Hmm.
expected Diego Luna to be good. I
Hmm.
expected the key players to be good, but what really strikes me so far about this show is just how fantastic every supporting character, every supporting actor has been, and I just feel like they take every role very seriously, like casting it, and um, the quality of acting and casting in all of the parts in this show just really makes me feel like they care so much about character in this show, and not just for oh well, our three principal characters or whatever. We're going to make sure we really focus on those characters. I think anybody with a speaking line in this show is it's taken very seriously, and that's a weird thing to say, because it's like, well, I'm sure anyone who's making television, when they put somebody on screen and are having them deliver dialogue, it's not like they don't take it seriously. But I just think like
Hmm.
there's a level of like really understanding and wanting to communicate like a real person, um, for even a character who's going to have a couple lines and that's it, because you really feel it. I feel like I really feel the quality of the acting in every part, every single part, even the tiny parts.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you can kind of tell that people. I mean, I think there's deliberate choices in who the actors that are chosen here, um, and I also think probably like the coaching and directing on set is like really pushing people to inhabit um, their characters in like a very like human way,
Mm-hmm.
rather than you know, characters being like Star Wars archetypes, I guess,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
genre
and that
archetypes.
it's true of the dialogue as well, because there's no sort of like real punchy, campy dialogue like there is in Star Wars movies
Mm.
either. The dialogue is very grounded, and there's some jargon, there's some space jargon in there,
Hmm.
from time to time, and a lot of which I'm not even sure what they're talking about, um, but it's just a that's just content, that's just the content, but the way it's written, um, I think is, yeah, really grounded and very believable, and you know yeah, I think grounded is the right word, because the dialogue in, say, The Empire Strikes Back, or Revenge of the Sith, or whatever, it's not particularly grounded,
Yeah.
um, and it's not trying to be. So yeah, it's just a different choice here. But you feel that right away as well, I think, watching the show.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's it's weird because like there's I think one of the other kind of like meta conversations happening right now is like, is this even Star Wars? Um because it doesn't, you know, it it doesn't include some of the you know, a lot of the things that people I think generally associate with Star Wars. Um and it's just it's telling a different kind of um story and like a different kind of setting, and there's not really much of like, at least so far, much in the way of like high tech or mythical aspects of it. And I do feel like there's um like definitely precedence for these sort of more kind of kind of grounded stories in Star Wars. I think, to like I would say like parts of like Lost Stars um does this, and then like going back to the EU, like the Med Star books, even though those are like Clone Wars era, they're like stories about like doctors basically, in Star Wars. And you get the stuff like here and there in the like certain point of view books and stuff, but I think on this scale it is a different, definitely a very different um kind of Star Wars. And um I don't I don't like wholly think that's a bad thing or a wrong thing. I think it's really good and really effective, but I also like it's still, to me, still does feel like it's set in the Star Wars universe. And I think the the way it looks and the jargon, I think actually goes a long way in that as well. And there's droids here and there, and there is like a main droid who's kind of quirky and has their own personality, um, but in in a way, to me, it there's like moments, especially in like the very beginning of the first episode, where it felt extremely cyberpunk, which
Mm.
I think is something that Star Wars never really feels like. And it's hard for me to like think of examples of that, like maybe like Coruscant in like the beginning of Attack of the Clones, like kind of has that vibe. But like, yeah, like the first part where they're like in the club, the bar, and all that stuff happening, like was definitely had like a Blade Runner type feel to it. Parts like there's like a little bit of like Mass Effect in the show that I feel in weird ways. Um but
You
yeah,
think Tony Gilroy's a big Mass Effect guy?
uh I would love to know Tony Gilroy's
I don't
opinions
think
on
so. I
video
I
games
don't
in
think he's a
general.
video game guy.
Like,
Don't think he's a video game guy.
someone asked this dude, what does he think of video games and what does he think of Marvel movies? uh
Oh no no no.
and
Uh
just let him go, because I have
oh.
been enjoying every interview I read
Yeah
with this dude. Like, he's so blunt and transparent, which is very refreshing. And he's just not really reverent of Star Wars in
yeah.
general. Like, and so it's just like very different vibes, and I'm loving it. But yeah, the
Ryan,
show. Oh, go ahead.
you'll appreciate this. Marty Scorsese famously does not like Marvel movies, right?
Right.
He's been singing the praises of Ty West lately. He
Of
loves the Ty
Pearl.
West movies. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Pearl,
Yep.
yeah,
So
which I'm
that was cool.
still meaning to see. I haven't had time to get to the theater, but I
Yeah,
loved X.
I didn't see X either, so I need
Oh
to see both.
man, one of
I
my
did
one of my
recently watch
favorite
House of the
movies.
Devil again. Um,
Ooh,
yeah,
always a good
yeah.
call.
So like the neo noir like Blade Runner type stuff for
Yeah.
sure in the opening. I also feel like, because you mentioned the droids earlier, I feel like the droids don't feel like, I mean, they slightly feel like Star Wars droids, but like they don't really feel like Star Wars droids. Actually, I was shocked at how blatant I thought the Wally homage was in the first episode, like with B2 emo or whatever. I'm not sure what the designation of the droid is. I think it's B2
Yeah.
emo, right? Like in that junkyard area, like there were shots where I was like, I hadn't even seen Wally very much, but I was like, I mean, the droid looks like Wally, but then like in that
Uh-huh.
junkyard setting, like there are shots that were like, wow. I mean, like somebody is definitely intentionally. Um, in fact, Toby Haynes, the director, what has he done? I wonder if he's if he's been involved in anything that maybe would make that make more sense. But yeah, it really felt like a very strong Wally homage there. And but also Luthen's ship when he's flying into Phoenix, I believe his name of the planet, right, or something like that. When he's flying in, like, is talking to him, and the way B2 emo talks, and then the way the ships talk to characters and stuff, it to me it has like a very 60s 70s like retro future type like sort
Hmm.
of vibe, or even like 2001 kind of feeling, you know what I mean? So yeah, there's a lot of like sci-fi influence here that feels not very Star Warsy, which is not a problem to me. I just it's a different flavor, right, and a very different kind of
Hmm.
show. So I don't think you really want to have like battle droids walking around saying Roger, Roger in a show like this. That's very kind of
Hmm.
grounded and serious, or even C3PO. I think that would not fit the tone of the show, right? So it makes sense in that regard, but definitely a different flavor. In fact, our mutual friend Josh, who has been pretty hard on the recent Star Wars, um,
Hmm.
recent Star Wars, basically pretty hard on most of it.
Hmm.
I can't remember where he landed on Mandalorian, but he didn't even like Rogue One, and he really liked the first couple episodes of Andor. And one thing he said
Nice.
after watching them was, if I didn't know it was Star Wars, watching this, these first episodes, I wouldn't have thought it was Star Wars. Like, there's nothing in it
Hmm.
that's like super screams Star Wars at you. I know there's going to be troopers and stuff coming up. I think and we're going to get the empire, the Imperial Senate, and I think there's going to be plenty of stuff in future
Hmm.
episodes that will, kind of show their hand a little more in the fact, like in the sense that this is a Star Wars show. But yeah, these first three episodes, not totally feeling that way, um, which again is interesting and totally fine. Uh, and on that topic, I also think these first three episodes, what a great example of the fact that Tony Gilroy has been saying that these this season is going to be like, I think, four little movies, right? And that they have
Hmm.
the same director directing like three or four episodes, and so each of them will feel to a certain extent like, well, they have the same directors directing those episodes because they're part of like a story arc, or whatever. And I'm just like,
Hmm.
this is like Toby Haynes's little Andor movie,
Yeah.
and it all just felt like one. And by the time you get to the unbelievable final 10 or 15 minutes of the third episode,
Hmm.
it's like all coming together, and it feels so um climactic, and there's so much kind of all coming together and being resolved in those final moments of that third episode, that is just like, no, this is somebody's kind of like mission statement, or their you know what I mean, their manifest,
Hmm.
their Andor manifesto. It's like they put it all together in these three episodes, and it works perfectly.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, there's every like it'll be so interesting to go back. I haven't had a chance to rewatch the three episodes. I don't know when that time will come for me, but I'm obviously going to rewatch this. And yeah, it'll be so interesting to go back and like see it from the beginning, knowing what you do by the end of the the third episode. Because and it's not like there's like huge revelations or anything that like make you like recontextualize, everything, but it's like there's just like the pieces on the board like start moving from the first like second of the show, and every piece is important and they all come together by the end in just like really smart ways.
I will say though, I think like if you look at the script or the story of the first episode, it kicks off with a pretty tense, obviously, scene, and it's the inciting incident of this whole story, right? Like
Hmm.
Andor, sort of accidentally killing those guys and having to deal with the fallout of that. So it does open up with a bang, so to speak. But then I
Hmm.
think the rest of the episode really takes its time, and if you care about characters and you want to tell a human story, um, I think that's how it should be done, right? So I'm not complaining, but I will tell you, like, I couldn't get my family to finish watching those episodes, and one of my students who I teach a film as lit class, we do like a favorite film, assignment at the beginning of the year. His favorite film is Rogue One. His primary complaint about Rogue One, because one of the things I said was like, what would you change about this movie? Like that's one of the parts of the assignment.
Mm-hmm.
The primary thing he said was that, well, there's so many characters and you didn't really get time to get to know all of those characters on a, a more deep level or whatever. Right. So he comes in the next day after this first episode came out and he's like, yeah, it was kind of boring. It was a little slow. It was kind of boring, and I was like, oh, I think he went and watched the other two. I don't know for sure. But anyways,
Mm-hmm.
long story short, or long story long, I just think that while the first episode's exciting in the beginning, after that, you have to really kind of like want to invest in the show and in the characters. And in my anecdotal
Mm-hmm.
experience, it's a challenge for people, And the sad
Mm-hmm.
thing about
Mm-hmm.
that to me is that I really believe that once you get into the second and third episodes, it's less challenging in that regard. Like I think there's more emotional like Andor is involved in Cassian Andor is involved in emotional scenes, like his emotional interaction with Marva in the second episode, and I mean there's a little bit of emotional stuff in the first one too, but it's just more, we're following him around as he goes and talks to all these different people, and it's like it's very sort of plot, kind of heavy, right? Like I got to talk to this person to make sure my credits are in order, I got to talk to this person to get a
Mm-hmm.
ship so I can get off the planet, like, but and I think it loses some people. Like some people get are it loses them there. I also found myself thinking like, God, I wish this was a movie. And we were in the. I mean, I don't want it to be a movie. I'm glad it's a show. But like, if I had my family in a movie theater and they
Mm-hmm.
had to sit through all three, I think by the end or even by the middle, I think they'd be like, oh, okay, this is good. But when there's the chance to
Mm-hmm.
like pick up your phone and play Candy Crush or walk into the other room and make something to eat or just say, I'm going to go upstairs and do something else, which is what happened to me. Like people gave up
Mm-hmm.
on it. So um, that's one. I don't know if it's a drawback. Like it's not. I don't think it's creatively a drawback, but I think just in
Mm-hmm.
terms of hooking people on the show, it's a little bit of a drawback.
Yeah, I think it's uh I think that limits its audience. I
Mm,
think like people in general just like now just like watch so much TV. Like just in general. That's just like the thing that people do. And there's just so much of it that I think people kind of take it for granted, and a lot of times TV just ends up being like background noise for people to be like on Facebook or Twitter on their phone and stuff. And with this show, like you and I don't want it to be like a, oh, the you shouldn't watch movies on an airplane or like or on your phone or whatever, like policing how people like watch stuff. But really, like, it's just a fact that you have to pay attention to this show because there is um a lot of spoken dialogue that comes hard and fast, uh and there's also a lot of unspoken storytelling. The Like I mentioned earlier, like the actors really inhabiting the characters, like there's so much like unsaid in this show that if like you're just like listening for exposition to move the plot around along, like you're only getting like half of the story because so much is in the way the characters emote and the expressions they make and like the way they deliver dialogue and lines, because like it's a whole bunch of people not being totally forthcoming with each other, and like there's just these small like ticks and there's so much nuance to the performances and the way the story's told that like you really have to be fully invested. Like I was doing my usual like Star Wars thing that I do with like Mandalorian or whatever, and as I was watching the show, like I started like taking notes on my phone, and then like probably halfway through the first episode, I just had to like put my phone down and just be like, nope, I need to just watch this. Like
Yeah.
I can't be taking notes on this. Like I'm just gonna have to watch it, remember what I can, and then rewatch it another day.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I took notes um on the second and third episode, but only on the second viewing cuz I was just like I don't want to,
Mm,
you know, I don't want to have another screen or the I don't want to even say temptation cuz I will be the person I'm comfortable being that asshole right now and being like I will police how you watch a show, you know what I mean, or whatever. Like I am that guy. Like, I mean, I'm not going to tell you don't watch something on the airplane because what else are you going to do? You're captive in that tube in the sky. You know what I mean? But like,
mhm,
I have am around too many people who are always doing something else whenever they're watching something, and it's like kind of sad to me. You know what I mean? I feel like it's
mhm,
like it is whatever. Anyway, point is, yeah, I always hate that, but I think it's just with the show, especially like you said, it's really important to invest in it, and it's not the kind of like it's not the kind of show that is designed for people to sort of casually pay attention to. Like you
mhm,
have to, I guess, you have to care enough to really want to watch these characters and watch their story develop and get to know them. And so if you're like, I'll watch it, but I don't really want to like really invest myself in it or give it my full
mhm.
attention or whatever. Like it's just not, it's not going to work, So
Yeah.
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 Um, all right. Well, we'll see what happens. I mean, I think the reviews are super good. The buzz is really positive on it, but I've
Mhm.
just had a little bit of that anecdotal kind of experience where people are kind of jumping off a little too quickly. Um, Another friend, though, a friend of mine that I was working out next to this morning in our workout class, like I can't remember what the teacher said. The teacher said something though about something. Oh, I think just talking about the song that was playing. Like, oh, the song is so good, so good. And I, turned to the guy next to me, who's a friend of mine. And I was like, also so good. Andor on Disney Plus. You got to watch it. So good. And he texted me about an hour and a half later and he's like, just finished the first episode. Thumbs up. This is so good or really awesome or whatever. So, you know,
Nice.
I
Nice.
mean, I've heard from more people who love the show and are like blown away by how good it is, but
Mhm.
definitely, some people bouncing off a little too early. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
should we talk about some characters in this show, Ryan?
Sure. Sure.
Okay. I feel like we should start with Casa first, Cassian.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
the first episode is actually titled Casa, which I didn't notice. This is not like The Mandalorian where, they put an episode title up on the screen or anything like that when the show starts. So I
Mhm.
just saw that it was called Casa when I was looking on Disney Plus. But that's the name of the first episode. And I will say this. I think I'll start off with this. So far, I feel like um, the show is not living up to the expectation that the creators put out there, um, in interviews and stuff in the past of being like, we really want to show you this guy, Cassian, and you're going to see this journey where he goes from like being a not so good dude to being like the hero in Rogue One or whatever. I feel like that's sort of what people had been saying in interviews over the last couple of years
Right.
about the show. I don't like he's seems like a pretty great guy so far. You know what I mean? Obviously, he shot that guy in the face because he had to, because otherwise
Uh-huh.
he was gonna be arrested for accidentally killing the other guy.
Mhm.
But that is that's one of the I guess that's one of the casualties of the writing and the acting and direction being so good is that I feel like in every action he's taking I understand why he's taking that action. You know what I mean? I empathize with what he's doing, and so so far it. I was expecting them to really have him be kind of not a very empathetic character to start out with, and it would take joining the rebellion and maybe seeing some things for him to kind of become a better person and I mean, like within the first couple episodes, he's talking about how he's got credit stashed away for Marva. And, one of the lines that really got me was when he told, B2 or B as Marva refers to him. So maybe I'll just call him B. But
Mhm.
as he told him, like, hey, I forgot to tell Marva I'm sorry. So tell her that. And also tell her to keep the heat on, because I know it
Mhm.
gets really cold or whatever. And there was so much humanity in that line, and the sort of class politics and social politics of the show, I think, are really present in that line too. Because
Mm,
it's one of those things where it's like, well, she's gonna go without heat, you know what I mean? Because
mhm,
to try to save a few credits, she's gonna go without heat. But anyways, just like even in these first episodes, he's seems very concerned with making sure he's put money aside for his mom and making sure she's taken care of. And he tells Brasso, please try to keep an eye on Marva, at the end of the third episode when he's talking to him for the last time. And he just seems like a really good guy, So that's not a complaint, but it's surprising to me because I
mhm.
really thought he was not going to come across so well, and that would be a challenge for audiences. Like, do I want to watch the show about this guy who's not great, but he seems pretty great to me so far?
Yes, I mean, I would say like some of his he is still a flawed character though. Like he's not a total baby face.
He's
Because
not
I
Ray.
think yeah, I think he's um he's like yes, he like looks out for others, but like he also is like very driven to do the things that like he wants to do,
Hmm.
and like he in some ways without regard to the consequences that it would have for others. um and I think he's generally like maybe just on like a social level inconsistent and a bit unreliable, as like a friend or a partner. There is a lot of alluding to him having many partners um in the show,
That was
which
another one of Marva's best lines when they were trying to figure out, like, who knows that you are from the planet he's from. I forget the name of the planet at the moment. They say it like 2,000 times,
they
but
say it so many times I
Canary,
can't think of it
Canary,
either. Canary, yeah.
Canary, right? Or Canary,
Canary.
Canary. Yeah. Uh, who else knows you're from Canary? And he's like, well, you told the X, person A and person B, and she's like, well, they're family, and she's like, I'm worried about all your women, that
Yeah.
some of whom I don't even know. Like, I'm worried about all your women. So, yeah. Which is again another great example. Like, that's really the only thing that, and maybe there's another line or two like that, but um, we're developing, or the show is developing, rich characters very efficiently, you know, uh,
Hmm.
and not in a way where the expository dialogue feels really obvious um, and on the nose either. And that can be charming in Star Wars when there's expository dialogue that's super like it's very evident. Like, well, George Lucas wrote this line, so you'd know what a what a hyperdrive is or whatever. Like, it
Hmm.
doesn't bother me. I think it's fun, um, but it wouldn't match the tone of this show. And the tone of this show is that these people are very real people who talk to each other like very real people, and yet they're still able to pack it full of information in subtle and believable ways like that. So uh,
Hmm.
that's great. But
Yeah.
yeah, you're right, he probably sleeps around. He seems like he drinks a lot,
Hmm.
and is
He
maybe
owes people a lot of money.
he owes people money. That's true.
Hmm.
That's true. um yeah.
But I
it,
don't
but
think
it's
like
but it's also like a dog eat dog world, right? Everybody's struggling to
yeah,
get by in that in that world.
yeah, and I don't think like any of those things are really flaws. Like generally I think you can like like you can have debt and still be like a good person, all of us with
Sure.
student loans. And you can you can sleep around and still be a good person. You can drink a lot and still be a good person. But I think like all of these things and just kind of like his like hyper focus on his um goals, which he doesn't quite have like a clear path to, like how to kind of he wants to essentially
Well,
stick it to the empire, but and so he does it in like just the ways he knows, which is like the whole crux of the plot is him joining something bigger. Um but I think like all of these things kind of together just makes him like kind of like an unreliable person and someone who also will like, he will kill and do the wrong thing to like get himself out of trouble.
Yeah, a couple things on that real quick though. I think that the show really what I think the show is telling us, because I've been thinking about that. Wait, what is he trying to accomplish? Because like
Hmm.
Luthen is like, look, people like you are valuable, and like we don't want to waste your skill, and you could really, don't you want to stick it to the Empire, and all that stuff. And it's like, okay, so is Cassian just doing like, is he like the Ghost Crew in the beginning of season 1 of Rebels, where he's just finding little ways to stick it to the Empire but not being very
Hmm.
effective at that? Or is he more just like, okay, essentially what I'm trying to say is I feel like actually what the show is telling us so far is that he wants to find his sister, and that's what he's trying to do. And I don't really
Hmm.
see much evidence that he's even trying to stick it to the Empire or really do anything for a bigger cause. Now Bix, on the other hand, she knows
Hmm.
Luthen, and she seems to be dedicated to the cause to a certain degree. We don't know to what degree yet. We'll find out more, I think,
Hmm.
as the show goes on. And one of the great things in the third episode is the fact that we find out that like most of the people in this village or this town or
Hmm.
city or whatever it is seem to be, it's a very like working class community kind of ethos they have there, which is like, we're going to look out for each other, and like, yes, we want to resist Primor, and we want to resist the corporate sector authorities, and we want to resist
Hmm.
the Empire or whatever it is, but not so much in a like we're actively trying to fight them kind of way, is not the feeling I got, but more in a we just have little ways of protecting each other and helping each other sort of thing. Bix is the exception. Bix is obviously, and maybe some of this, more minor characters that she talks to. I don't know. Like, we don't really get a sense. I don't feel, of how big this web of rebellion or whatever it is in this town is.
Hmm.
Um, and I feel like the next episodes, well, will have to be on this planet again, I guess, to a certain extent, because Bix is there, I think, still, and I know obviously she's going to continue to be an important character. Um, but yeah, anyways, I feel like right now Cassian's motivations are to find his sister, and that's pretty noble too. He lost his sister when Marva took
Hmm.
him for his own good from his home planet, and now he's like sneaking around. He doesn't want her to know that he's trying to find his sister,
Hmm.
and I think that's what the sneaking around is about, more so than being self-serving and self-interested.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So
mean, yeah, there's also I think another vibe to get from this show is a little bit of X-Files there too with
mm,
um Fox Mulder and his like his general motivation is to find his sister
okay.
who uh he believes was abducted by aliens, which, you know what, Cassian's sister could have been abducted by aliens. That is a possible thing that could happen in the Star Wars universe. But I think like there's yeah, I think that's definitely like part of his motivation. But like he also like he has that whole like which is now like a scene that's just like burned into my memory, and it is like so recontextual. It's so much better like seeing it contextualized in the show. Is the conversation with Luthen
Hmm.
uh there, and but like it's pretty obvious that like Cassian has you know not even like no love for the Empire, but like extreme distaste for the Empire, from the conversation there. And maybe it's yeah. So I think like
Yeah, that's a
I,
good point. That's a pretty
yeah.
significant scene, because he's like, they're so fat and full of themselves and happy with themselves, and like all you need is a uniform, an imperial token, and you can walk right in and steal from them.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that
And
distaste is strong, as you said, but it does kind of seem like he's stealing from them. Just you know, like I need money to I think he needs money to like take care of his family and friends and himself. Also needs money
mhm,
to try to like track down his sister. Um,
mhm.
and not only do I not feel bad about stealing it from the Empire, I feel pretty good about hurting the Empire in small ways or whatever. But again, like it
Yeah.
reminds me of Ezra or something in the beginning of episode season 1 of Rebels. It's like I'll steal from the Empire anytime I can, but not so much like I'm on a crusade to take down the Empire or I'm on like a on a mission to fight them. It's more like I hate them and I'm really struggling just to stay alive. And so,
Yeah.
I'm not going to steal from other working class people, right? But I definitely will steal
Yes.
from that giant corporation or that giant empire or whatever.
Yeah, and I think like he also just has a general dislike of y- I guess the empire, the corporate sector, whatever, because of the what happened on his home planet, where he had his his um friend, person he looked up to, kind of the leader of their group, like seemingly killed. I don't know, because they like take the body away, and I don't know if it's confirmed that they were killed, but like by blaster fire. And then there's like the scene of him just like destroying things in the ship. um so yeah, I think that's probably like the root of the anger.
Yeah. That part was pretty confusing for me. I mean, not the scene in general, but I'm trying to figure out who that was. And so I don't know. Maybe we can talk about that later if we have time or if we want to. But uh, they Marva at one point says that they just killed a Republic officer. About the person that got shot with all the hit with all the darts. Blown at him or whatever. Like the one who killed the leader of Cassian's tribe or the leader of Cassian's like yeah, I guess like well, I guess it's the leader of his tribe, really. I don't know where all the adults are though, because they're all so young. But I guess it's the leader of
Yeah.
Cassian's tribe. Um, but yeah, referred to that person as a Republic officer. But then I didn't like recognize that patch on their uniforms, and I saw somebody say somewhere that that was a Confederacy patch, like the Confederacy of Independent Systems patch. And I'm like, okay, well then that's not the Republic. You know what I mean? And then also, if it was the Republic, I guess it makes sense if like he was angry at the Republic then, which then becomes the Empire, if that set during the Clone Wars. So then I guess that does make sense. But
Yeah.
um, I'm not sure about those uniforms and like that's a Star Wars explained thing. I guess I'm sure there's already information about that out there, but like that's a
Yeah.
little much for my brain to figure out because that's not like those aren't typically what we would expect. Like a Republic ship in the Clone Wars, is that what the people flying it would look like? Is that what their uniforms would look like? Is that the logo that they would have? Stuff like that. Like it just doesn't. It didn't remind me of anything, or it didn't like. It wasn't in terms of the iconography and stuff. It wasn't really obvious to me what that was, and
Yeah.
so yeah. But anyway, um, and the actor who plays young Cassian, I don't have his name up right now, but he's fantastic as well. So expressive. I felt like his face is so expressive.
Yep.
Um, and just like, yeah, whoever cast this show, which again, this is information that's readily available, but the casting director of this show, just unbelievable because it's fantastic.
Yeah. Yep. And that's another scene, like we were kind of talking about, like where you kind of have to be glued to the screen to like understand what's happening in that whole scene, because it is like there's so much like I mean it's they're they're speaking a different language, right?
hmm
They're
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and it's not subtitled, right? I've only watched the
No,
episode
it's not subtitled. No.
once, so yeah. So yeah, you it like really falls on um like the quiet actions and the emoting of the characters. So like yeah, if you're like looking at your phone during that, like you're just missing so much.
Hmm. Antonio Vina is the name of that actor, and he's
Okay.
really exceptionally good.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah. Well, I mean, Cassian is the character that we knew the most about coming into the show,
Hmm.
and they're still obviously, obviously learning about his life as a child, and the motivation of finding his sister and his relationship to Marva. All that stuff is there's been a lot of reveals and new information about him, but that is the character that we had known from before.
Hmm.
Um, a completely new character for the show is Bix, who is played
Hmm.
by Adria Arjona. Um, Probably mispronouncing that, but she is unbelievable in the role. She's fantastic. The character is fantastic, I think. And yeah, there's this. I guess it's not totally clear what the history is between those two characters, what the relationship is between them. Obviously, her boyfriend Tim is pretty jealous of Cassian, but
Uh-huh.
you know, hard to blame him considering like number one, Cassian looks like Diego Luna, and number two, she is kind of sneaking around all the time, right? But
Hmm.
she's sneaking around because she's involved in some way with the nascent rebellion because
Hmm.
she's got Luthen's phone number. Um,
Hmm.
Now, I do think there was some level of ambiguity in terms of her motivation too. Uh, because it's like Cassian, like I guess just because like we don't know much about her relationship with Luthen beyond what Cassian knows, and we know I think what Cassian knows is like there's a guy with a lot of money that you sometimes sell stuff to. You know what I mean? Uh, I think that's what he knows because she was like, I can put you in contact with that guy because you need money fast. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
like you got a guy who will want to buy this, but I don't know. Like, I don't think there was anything that indicated to us that he knew more than that about that situation.
Yeah.
And I don't know that there's any lines or anything specific that would tell us as an audience that she believes in that cause that explicitly tells us that, that the reason she knows Luthen and the reason she can get into contact with him and everything is because she's low key working for the rebellion and contributing to that cause. I think she is,
Yeah.
but I don't think that was explicit, was it?
I I don't think so either. I think I mean, I'm assuming and hoping that she is going to be one of the main characters and that she's going to be appearing in future episodes, and that her story's not over, because I think there is a story to tell there. I think it would be very weird if they like didn't kind of give, some like flashbacks, or just like her just like straight up saying something about that, and like what her motivation is, and like what she wants, um you know in the future, and what future she wants. So yeah, I think that's just a thing that's to come.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I have no doubt she's gonna continue to be part of the show, and I don't have any doubt that she'll be working for the cause. But it's one of those things where I do think the the planet that he lives on, the people that are in his life, are mostly all presented as um, struggling to get by, and having to fight and scrape to survive, for what they can.
Hmm.
And so I would not be disappointed if I found out like, oh well, she just has been working with him because he's like, someone that has resources and she needs that. But I don't know. There are lines of like what is he? There's a line he's talking to her, and I think he's like, "Do you trust him?" You know, and she's like, "He'll be there." And
Hmm.
I feel like there was something else. Like I don't know. He asked her. I want to say there was a line where he asked her like who she's talked to or who knows about this or something. I don't know. Maybe not. But anyway, I think we all know where it's going. It's just to me, it's the question is, what is her commitment or motivation? Right now at this early stage of the story, but
Hmm.
we'll see. Either way, she's great. Her boyfriend
Hmm.
Tim was also great. I think
Hmm.
really great performance from him. He looked so familiar to me, and I was like, where do I know him from? Um, Turns out I know him from The Force Awakens because he was an X-wing pilot in The Force Awakens. Uh,
Really?
yep, he was. He was an X-wing pilot in The Force Awakens. Although that's actually not what I recognized him from. He was also in Mayor of Easttown. I don't know if you ever watched the show on HBO Max, Mayor
I
of
have
Easttown.
not.
It's a great show, or a really good show, and he plays a key role in that. So, and he was really good in it, and he's excellent in this as Tim,
Hmm.
space name Tim, and but it's space name Tim because it has two M's instead of one. But
Uh-huh.
yeah, I thought he was fantastic. I don't know, what do you think about that character, Ryan?
Yeah, like I don't like him. Um
I do. I like him.
really?
Yeah,
No, I think he's a real bad boyfriend.
you do.
Real dishonest guy.
Yeah,
His jealousy got people killed. Um, you know, and because really the reason he rats out Andor is because he's like jealous and he feels threatened in his relationship. Which I think it is like also implied in the show that um Bix and Andor have romantic
a history.
history.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um and so yeah, that's like what kind of like leads him to like in a huff go like narc him out. So yeah, I don't like him, but I also think that is like a very realistic and grounded character arc for
Mm-hmm.
him. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also just he has a tragic character arc because he's one of the earliest main character deaths we have in the show. And he really he ultimately played himself, and it's because of his actions that eventually he's shot down in the streets, because of what he brought to their planet.
Yeah, but I don't. Yes, but I don't think that the story is told, the show is presented in a way where it's like, you know, he is this jealous boyfriend and he's just being selfish and like I don't think it's presenting it in a way where we're watching that and go and thinking to ourselves, "Oh, I can't understand his why he's behaving like this," or like it I think it's i- this a lot of times even I wouldn't call him a villain, but even the characters who are villains in the show I feel like are presented in
Hmm.
ways in which you you view them as real people, and so their motivations are real. They're not
Yep.
cartoonish, they're not whatever. And so it's like, and you see plenty of times where the script or the episodes show us multiple moments where he's just like he's not being controlling, necessarily, when he's like, well, why do you need me to open the shop up early or whatever? Oh, I just have errands to run. I just have errands to run. I just like, and like, do I think it's cool that he was following her around the town? No, I don't think it was cool. Like, no, like, yes, he was being a bad boyfriend, but also I think she was being a bad girlfriend. And like she was being a bad girlfriend in service of a larger cause, right? And trying to protect Cassian and,
Hmm.
whatever. But that doesn't mean like sorry, I think Arnold Schwarzenegger in True Lies was being a bad husband when he was sneaking around constantly, whatever. Like it doesn't make him a bad guy, but it's true,
Uh-huh.
and I think like at a certain point, I understand her motivations. I understand his motivations. I understand all these
Hmm.
characters' motivations. And so I think he made the wrong call when he, drunkenly ratted on Cassian. especially if he's like most of the other characters in this community who kind of hate Primor and hate the Empire and hate like
Mhm.
the power, the powers that be, and the financial interests of this planet or whatever. Like if
Mhm.
that's where his allegiances are, and he's like, but I'll still sell out Cassian, just to so he'll stop being around my girlfriend or whatever. Like that's not cool at all. That's really bad. That's
Mhm.
awful. But it's written and acted in a way where I'm like, but I still kind of like that guy. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
that's I think to me the sign of a really a great show is like how much you still care about him, or are interested in him, or can I don't want to say excuse, but at least can empathize with the choices he makes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like this is a show that like proves that again, like characters can be flawed and not villains. Um
In fact, they should have some flaws. Although Rey's my favorite character in Star Wars, and she doesn't really have any flaws. But like in most cases, especially in a grounded show like this, they need to have flaws. Like if Cassian was just perfect all the time, like what is
mhm.
the point of that?
Yeah.
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 Hey, there's another character in this show called Luthen, who's played by Stellan Skarsgård, and
Uh-huh.
he's also
Yeah.
awesome.
Uh-huh.
Could you empathize with him when Nathaniel Hornblower or whatever that guy was with the little mustache and the hat, who was on the
Oh
on
my
on the
god.
space bus with him? Like, could you empathize with Luthen when he like just every single expression on his face was like, "Stop talking to me. Why are you talking to
Mhm.
me? Like,
Mhm.
don't come sit
Mhm.
closer to me. Like, don't do it."
Yeah.
Um,
He's when
uh,
he's responding in grunts
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and snorts. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Well, he's gotta be saving up his energy and his concentration for mispronouncing Cassian's last name at every turn in the
Andor.
following scene. These days will end, Cassian Andor. Yeah,
Yeah, well, that's how you know this is a Star Wars show, honestly, is because people
it's true.
pronounce names in different ways, and
It's
that's
true.
fine.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait to learn more about him though, especially and there's so much hinted at in the trailers for this show that we haven't seen even a glimpse of yet. For
Mhm.
instance, we've had 0 seconds of Mon Mothma on screen,
Yeah.
and I just feel like the show's going to open up and just be that much more interesting once we're adding in characters like Mon Mothma and Deidre,
Mhm.
but also when we're seeing Luthen's double life, because I already find him super compelling, but right now he's just a grizzled dude who's like, you know, shouting at Cassian or whatever. But we know from the trailers and other, yeah, well, from the trailers that he's like a senator or something who has like a weird hairpiece on and like goes to you know galas and
Mhm.
hobnobs with rich people, and then he also puts on his trench coat and grunts at working class guys on the space bus, so and
Mhm.
blasts pre-core or pre-more soldiers, and like he's got this whole double life. So speaking of Arnold from True Lies, he's got this whole double life thing going on. So um, I think that he's only going to get more compelling as the show goes on.
Yeah, absolutely. Um,
So wait, maybe like just like let's just talk about Marva real quick while we're still talking about kind of Cassian's family and friends, and then we have to talk about Cyril Karn, who is fascinating. But Marva, played by Fiona Shaw, we knew she was going to be fantastic. I think just from the trailers and seeing the footage of her talking about this is what a rebellion sounds like and all that kind of stuff, right? But I think she is so great in this show, and the scene when Cassian comes home after being on a bender or whatever, she probably thinks, or I guess she would have thought until she heard that there's like he's on the FBI most wanted list or whatever. But the scene where
mhm.
he comes home and she's just sitting there and she's like, "Oh, you've been out for a while," or whatever she says to him, and then
Mhm.
she's like, "Read it to him, B," and oh man, she's such a great uh concerned mother in that scene, I feel like. And
Mhm.
and then when she's under arrest or whatever, being held hostage by the Premor guys, and just like messing with them as she's sitting in that
Hmm.
chair, just messing with them. Um, I yeah, masterful. She's great.
Yeah, yeah. Trying to do the best with her troublesome large adult son.
Yeah.
Um, and
I was thinking about that earlier today. I was like, is it wait, so wait, how old is he supposed to be? Because he was probably supposed to be like late 20s max in Rogue One, which would be that's 5 years after this. So he's got to be like early 20s, right? Is probably like the age that we assume he is, somewhere around there.
I would put him in his like 30s in Rogue One. I mean, this information probably exists somewhere, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, and I would put him in his 20s, but also the actor in his 40s in
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
But he's aged very well, so it's not really a deal breaker. But yeah, I also just like loved the delivery of her. She has like the I guess line we've seen in the trailers about this is a reckoning,
A reckoning. Yeah.
which is fantastic, but also the the part, like, it just like really just, I don't know, it's just one of those lines that just like really land in something when they're like tearing apart her place, and she's like, you should be ashamed of yourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, just
Mm-hmm.
like for some reason the delivery of that just like hits so hard. um and yeah, like
How about her walking into Cassian's room and picking up that staff or whatever that was there? Like the transitions from the present day to the flashbacks in the show are really, really
hmm
well done, I think, too. And yeah, like and my and so that moment was great with her thinking back to when she found him, rescued him, however you want to put it, abducted him. I guess it
hmm
depends on your
yeah.
perspective on it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But that moment, like her looking at that staff, but then also later, like my heart was broken at the end of the third episode when it just shows her sitting there in her home alone after the Premor guys had left and everything's all torn up and all over the place. But she doesn't say anything. There's nothing like really obvious or over the top to indicate this, but I just and there's it's such a great sequence, and we'll talk more about it, I'm sure. Like I'll make sure that we do before we finish the show, but it lingers on a lot of people. And in that moment that it lingers on her, I just feel like she's distraught thinking about the fact that her son, is in a whole world of danger and like off planet, and she can't talk to him, or it has to be so scary to know like that he's caught up in this whole whatever he's caught up in, and
hmm
she can't check in on him, right? She can't like text him to make sure he's okay or call him to make sure he's okay or anything. That's got
hmm
to be so um scary. So, and I think
yeah,
she conveyed that very well in that moment. And
yeah,
the direction and the editing and the show and the writing and everything just conveyed that so well.
yeah. I think her story benefits strongly from the flashbacks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm personally, I don't know, I've probably talked about this before. Like, generally speaking, I'm not a huge fan of flashbacks in storytelling. I would like I feel like there's almost always a way to like write around it, and there's always a better choice, because you're always dealing with um just these like kind of um I don't know. Sometimes it's like uncanny valley situations, or just things looking off when it's like the same characters, and then sometimes it's like, oh, now I have to like imagine this person as a child or like as a teenager or whatever, and like um and I think there's like tons of ways to do flashbacks that are like, they're almost always jarring, and they're almost always like, this is like, these are like medicine I have to take. Like, I know it's going to be good for like my understanding of the story eventually, but you know, I know it's good for me, but I kind of just want that forward momentum with a story. So like I'm generally not a fan of flashbacks, and you know, I knew they were coming with this show. And you know, like flashbacks have become more prevalent in Star Wars when they used to not really exist. You know, like in the original trilogy, and such, in the original films, um and now they're just like a thing, and they're like, you know, this thing that just happens in Star Wars and whatever. But I I will admit, like at first I was like, okay, well here we are, like we're in flashback territory now. Like when they first started rolling out, I was like, okay, so now we're going to get like Cassian's origin as like a kid, cool. And like even though I was like already like so much more invested in like the present day story, which is like almost always the case. Like there's never really a point when I'm watching something that I want to be watching and I'm like, man, I really hope they cut to like 20 years ago. Like that would be so dope right now if like we just got a flashback. That would rule. So yeah, but I will say like you know, they're like super well done here. Like I have no complaints about the quality, but they just like weren't what I wanted because they're seldom what I want in when I'm watching a story. Um but the way, again, it all comes together in the end and like really like just puts the stamp on like who these characters are, where it's not just like, hey, that was a bunch of cool trivia I learned about this character. It's like, oh no, this is like a fundamental part of who this person is. And yeah, and I think for like Marva really benefited from that,
Hmm.
because she's such like a crucial component of those flashbacks.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't mind flashbacks in good movies and stories because I think, generally speaking, they're usually for the reason if it's something smart, it's usually for the
Hmm.
reasons you were just describing. Um, I hate, and I've talked about it numerous times on this show, I hate flashbacks that are showing us things we've already seen in the past. I can't stand that. Like,
Right,
so like when you're
right.
watching a show and they're like, you probably forgot about what happened in like watching Cobra Kai, which I was telling you about the other night. Like I love Cobra Kai, even though it's like really dumb and bad. It's also really good and funny. And They're always flashing back to stuff from the original Karate Kid movies. Although, to be honest, like a lot of
Ooh.
times I have forgotten what they're flashing back to. So, but they're always
Ooh,
showing you stuff
I
like
wouldn't
that.
like that. I wouldn't like that. Yeah.
Yeah, but when you watch the show and you're like, okay, this show's ridiculous anyways. Like I think trust me, like when I tell you you forgive a lot of stuff in Cobra Kai that you would never let fly in anything else. At least
Okay.
I do.
Yeah.
Like it is the anti Andor in terms of acting ability and dialogue and like so many things. Like it's a
Yeah.
ridiculous show, but it's really fun. But anyway, stuff like that. I hate it when they flashback. I hate when shows and movies flashbacks to stuff I've already seen,
Hmm.
because then it's not telling me anything new, right? It's not like
Right.
enriching, the story. But I feel like, and I also think like there is a significant amount of information we need to know about young Cassian because of what this story is. But I don't
Yes.
I don't think it would be better if the first 20 minutes of the first episode was all just set in the past and then like after that we never go back to the past anymore just to avoid using flashbacks. Like I think
Mm.
it does make more sense. And also certain things are revealed when they should be revealed in terms of the story being
Yes.
told instead
Yep.
of us knowing it all from the beginning, you know? So all that together, I think, is more than justifies the use of flashbacks here. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, you're right. Like we learn so much more about Marva as it goes on, um, and seeing that like Cassian. I guess we don't know yet what happens to everybody else on his planet. Do they all die? Do they not? I'm not sure. Like
Hmm.
but her belief is that the Republic or whoever would have killed him. if they found him there. So she had to take him
Mhm.
so that he wouldn't be killed. Um, you know, one wonders, like, couldn't she have brought him back like a month later? You know what I mean? Like, why did he have to like live with her for the rest of forever? Um, and I trust that the show is pretty. It seems like those are the kind of issues that this show will take seriously and consider and address. So
Mhm.
um, more on that going forward.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And
she's great.
even if not, it that the fact that she didn't just take him back, like that alone, just even if they don't touch upon that, like that's an ambiguity about her that I think it's okay to for us to sit with
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
as audience members. Like
Right.
maybe she like really wanted a son, and maybe, they don't have to, explicitly state that, and that's something
Hmm.
that we can kind of like parse out on our own.
Yeah.
Or wonder something else, like, I think it's okay to have that sort of ambiguity, but if they have, a story there, like, I trust them to deliver it well at this point.
Sure. Sure. Okay, let's talk about Cyril Karn and
Man.
Chief Hine and Sergeant Lynn. What's his name? Sergeant. I don't know, Sergeant something. Anyway, the squish guy that you were talking about earlier, Ryan.
Hmm. Hmm.
Let's talk about these guys. So I said, hey, let's talk about Cyril Karn, and you popped. So yeah, let's talk about Cyril Karn.
Man. um this is the Judy Hopps at the beginning of Zootopia character, the just really um you know really strong belief in their kind of their div- divine sense of justice and order, um and also like rule following, and wanting, and ambition, and all of these things, just a very young, not complacent uh person with newfound authority, which we can pretty much imply that he's gained standing, because he's, you know this is his life, um, and his divine purpose, and he works really hard and does what it takes, to be successful, um, and yeah, his beliefs, and I think um, s- sense of accomplishment and belief in his abilities are severely tested, through just the arc that his character has in these first three episodes, and it is fascinating to watch.
Yeah, the range of emotions that this actor expresses, like with his face alone,
Yes.
is pretty incredible. To see pride and confidence and anger and embarrassment and insecurity and fear,
Hmm.
everything that this
Yes.
actor is able to express, like, um, because yeah, it's a total roller coaster of emotions for this character, as you were saying, right? Like he really is kind of put through the gamut in terms of um, just his experiences, I guess. I mean, I feel like
Hmm.
his at the start of the show, he really believes in what he's doing for Precor, and the fact that these colleagues of his, these two Precor employees were murdered, is like, we have to get to the bottom of that, right? Like, he really
Hmm.
believes in that. I still think he believes that by the end of the third episode, so
Yeah.
uh,
Hmm.
I don't think he's starting to really question necessarily uh, the authority that he works for. You know, there's such interesting moments though, like when they're on the ship in hyperspace, and uh, the other sergeant guy, I think his name is Sergeant Mosk. I want to say, is it Mosk? Um, Yeah, Linus Mosk, Sergeant Linus Mosk,
Hmm.
the guy that is kind of leading the military operation there when they're on that ship, and he gives the big speech or whatever at the start of it. He says, "Well, they might not like us too much when we get there. They may not be super big fans of us, but remind them that they're able to lodge a complaint once a month at a meeting, or whatever." And he says
Yeah.
it. I think he's saying it earnestly, and then a lot of his troops or whatever kind of giggle at it, like, "Oh yeah, like like that's not going to do anything, right? Like that's a ridiculous, like that's just lip service." But he looks irritated by that. Linus Mosk, Sergeant Mosk looks irritated by that. And I think, um, Cyril does as well, right? Like this idea that they believe, in what they're doing.
Hmm.
In fact, when, obviously he's trying to kind of like placate or, please Cyril. But when they first meet, he's like, this is outrageous. Two people have been killed. Like, we've got to look into this. Anything less would be dereliction of duty, right? Like,
Yeah.
they're both true believers. I think they're both true believers. And there's a moment when the speeder crashes at the end of the third episode, where he looks at at Cyril from up on that rooftop, and they both smile at each other, and like they believe in what they're doing. Um, so but yeah, there was indications that some of those other soldiers don't, like, they're a little more they're a little more cynical, right? They probably don't really believe in the cause because the cause is bullshit, right? Like,
Yeah.
but these guys are still they still think that they still think that being a hired soldier of God, what's the name of the Eric Prince's like private security thing in Iraq, the Blackwater.
Blackwater. Hmm.
Yeah, they still think like when you work for Blackwater, you're doing the Lord's work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it seems like most of the people working for Blackwater are like, yeah, no, we're just out here terrorizing people for money. So yeah. Anyways, I think he's still a true believer. Whether or not his character goes on an arc where that faith in and what he's doing is shaken, maybe he changes sides. Maybe I don't know what his story is going to be. There's two
Hmm.
seasons of the show. He's an incredible actor, so I think he can do a lot more than just be the true believer bad guy. And so I think it'll be really interesting to follow his journey, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
Um, but even in these three episodes where he believes in Premor and the private security thing, and that he sees he sees challenges to it, but I don't think it shakes his faith in it. But still, you just see so many emotions and different ideas in his face and in his performance. It's incredible.
Hmm.
And Mosk, Sergeant Mosk, also such a charismatic and just interesting actor. Um, like so fun, so good in that role. Uh, that's another example of, I think, in other projects, maybe even other Star Wars shows. Um, I don't know that they necessarily would cast an actor of his quality, and I don't know what else he's done. I'm sure he's
Hmm.
done other things, and I probably would recognize him in other things. I don't know what else he's done. Um, I bet Force Material will know when I listen to their podcast. I'm
Yes.
looking forward to their podcast. They usually know that kind of stuff, so I bet they'll know. But he is so good, and I could just see. Anyway, I keep saying the same thing. The acting is outrageous, and they
Yeah.
cast the hell out of the show.
Yes. And something else that's a little I guess it's kind of changed in the Disney era, but I think um in the like original Lucas films, it was always like the generally the bad guys were like very European,
Mm,
um in like for the human characters. And this show is just extremely European across the board.
yeah,
Um
yeah, yeah, yeah.
like just yeah, I mean like I don't know every actor's nationality or country of origin. Um but yeah, like you feel like you're getting, you're kind of like a range of like British talent, a range of like Scottish, Irish. I'm not totally sure, but um, yeah, I think that's really that also gives this show. I like this is like the most American thing ever. Um, like it does give it like an extra sense of like class and
Hmm.
elevates it a bit. Like this is like guy who watches Downton Abbey once line, but like I mean, I think it definitely it adds to the different feel of it for sure. When it's not just like a bunch of like humans walking around who talk like they're from California. Um, and I think also like you were talking about the director and like what stuff he's worked on, and it's like he's worked on Doctor Who and Sherlock. Um, and I'm not really like a Whovian, a fan of Doctor Who. Seen I've seen a bit of it here and there. My wife's a big fan, but it's not exactly my thing. But I did watch all of Sherlock with Martin Freeman and Benedict Cumberbatch, and that was absolutely incredible.
Hmm.
And that was like um, a very like lots of like intentional pieces being placed and like everything kind of coming together in the end sort of show um which was fantastic. But I mean that's where I think like the roots of this production lie.
Yeah, and I'm not a person who, it's not like I think like, oh, American actors aren't as good as British actors, and like,
Mhm.
people from Europe or from the UK are better actors or something. But I think that, I'm prefacing what I'm about to say with that statement, because I do think this show probably really benefited from being filmed. I think it was filmed mostly in London and around there, and as a result, I think it seems like they cast a lot of British, Scottish, and Irish actors. And I don't know how to put this except for to say that if I think it's got to be a smaller community of actors than like than just because population wise, like that's a smaller um there are fewer people. There have to be fewer Scottish, British, and Irish actors than there are American actors, and I guess a
Mhm.
smaller pool of talent. And I think like the best talent in that smaller pool of talent, like they just like pulled them all in. They just like seem to have cast like the most amazing actors. And if they were casting just like and there, it's not like there are American actors in the show, right? Like Cyril is an American actor,
Mhm.
Diego Luna is a Mexican actor. Adria Arjona is a Puerto Rican actor, so it's not like it's all Scottish, Irish, and British people. But
Mhm.
wow, the Scottish, Irish, and British actors in this show are incredible. And yeah, I don't know anything about that industry, and certainly not in that part of the world, but it just seems like there are
Mhm.
incredible actors there. And maybe it almost like is like the opposite of logical, because it's like, oh, okay, well, you have more people to choose from in the United States, then you could you have more options, right? But I feel like
Mhm.
maybe the really extremely talented film and television actors in that part of the world are easier to identify. Or you know I don't know, maybe a project like Andor 2
Mhm.
is like really draws that cream of the crop talent as well, just in general. But and Tony Gilroy also probably too. you know
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm just
Yeah.
hypothesizing, but wow, the
Mhm.
actors are so good. I don't know why, but they
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, yeah, I don't want to make any broad stroke generalizations
well,
about
you already did, Ryan.
the
I'm trying to time. You said you said American actors suck, and that
well,
like thank God they had
I'm
all these
just saying
Brits in the show.
the bottom and middle tiers of actors are a little bit more elevated over there.
Yeah, because
It's
like just a couple minutes ago, you were like, oh wow, Alex Ferns and James McArdle and Rupert Van Sittart and Joplin Sibtain are like way better actors than Steven Seagal. And I was like, wow,
Mm,
I mean, you're just
mm.
going to flat out say it, Ryan, but you did.
I think the school of acting, it's like it's like school regional schools of wrestling. You have
Mm.
like like British strong style, like people who come up through that, have a different approach than wrestlers trained in the U.S. or Japan.
Yeah, I hear you because I do feel like maybe sometimes a lot of the supporting actors in other Star Wars shows have more of a trained at the WCW power plant kind of vibe, instead of maybe at the Hart Family Dungeon or whatever. So yeah, fair enough.
Mm. Which we're not even getting into Canada. Canadian actors
I'm
now.
sure there's at least one
Uh,
fantastic Canadian actor in this show. So,
yeah.
all right.
Um,
We're out of our depth at this point for
yeah.
sure. I think we've made that very evident. So
Mm-hmm.
let's
Mm-hmm.
let's move on. We talked about most of the important roles I think in these first few episodes. Um, Cheapine, he was fantastic. Brasso, he's fantastic. All
Mm-hmm.
of these actors are really great. So, but yeah, we've spent a good chunk of the episode talking about the characters and the actors who play them, which I think is what we should do with a show like
Mm-hmm.
this. Are there any other major topics you want to talk about before we wrap up here from the first three episodes?
Um, God, I haven't even looked at because I did write down notes after I was done with the show.
Yeah.
So there's okay. Oh God. Wow, I wrote down a bunch of notes and they're all stupid. So first one,
You should have gotten a
um
British person to write down your notes.
I'll just get a British person to deliver it and it'll work out.
Okay.
But no, there's the part where um Cassian is walking in the rain in his slicker
With the
across
drums? With the
the
drums?
bridge. Yeah, and total again huge video game fan Tony Gilroy once again indulging himself in a very the biggest filmmaker, showrunner, gamer since John Carpenter. He is indulging himself again because that scene was so reminiscent of the opening to Metal Gear Solid 2. Um, so
Wait, John
that's
Carpenter directed this episode? Is that what you said?
no, I just he's a known video game fan.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
he loves Sonic. Sonic is what got
I
him into
know,
video
I know,
games, and that's
I know he
like my
does.
favorite story ever. And he was like, "I don't really want to make movies anymore. I just want to make music and play video games and smoke weed and
He
living
rules.
his living his best life." Um, yeah, I think the so I I made the mistake. I told you and Kevin about this. I made the mistake of like looking at um Metacritic user reviews
Mm,
and to see like what the what just what people were saying cuz it just I think it is a show that's like interesting to like gauge reactions from people on, and Metacritic is not the best place, but I also didn't really want to like just go. I mean, like you can talk to your friends, and then like beyond that it's like where else are you finding this like these opinions. um but I read reviews and then like proper critic reviews and then like the user reviews, and something I kept well like and then there's like some just like terrible reviews from like the usual rabble that those people. But there's also like something I kept seeing in negative reviews was people saying that the show was slow.
mm.
And I guess in terms of action, sure, like there's not like a ton of like shootouts and like space battles and stuff like compared to Star Wars, but honestly, I found the pace of the show to like be like breathless at times, and it's not like action, it's trying to keep up with the characters. Like characters a lot of times are talking fast. They are again just doing a lot of storytelling with their expressions, and like you're like moving from, you have to like learn a lot of characters really quickly, and like you're trying to figure out their motivations, but like also no one in this show is like being honest with everyone, so you have to like read between the lines on just about everything. And I honestly found it like kind of hard to keep up with at times, until like I, kind of settled in, by like the third episode was where I was like, okay, I kind of know the score to a degree at this point, and there's still like lots of swerves and stuff happening there. But yeah, I don't really buy that complaint about like just a general statement that this show is slow, because I don't think it is, unless you're talking solely about action.
I think um, I think this is what I was saying before, though. I think this is where the structure and choices of the first episode are going to be a little bit of a liability for the show, because I don't think it's slow in episodes 2 and 3. And I do agree that in episode 1, there were moments where my head was spinning a little bit trying to like make sense of everything that was happening or what they were talking about. But that being
Hmm.
said, it's just like, I mean, I have to go back and watch it again. I've watched it twice, but I feel like the structure after that opening sequence is just like Cassian goes and talks to this person, then he goes and talks to that person, then he goes and talks to this other person, and there's some flashbacks in there too. But I felt a noticeable change in, I don't know if the pacing is the right way to put it, but I felt a
Mm,
noticeable change in the feeling of the show in the second and third episodes from the first one. And so I think the
mm,
first one gives the impression of a very slow burn. And then after that, I don't really feel that way so much in the second and third episodes, but I think the first one kind of does. And so that doesn't necessarily make it more accurate that the show's slow, but I do
mhm.
kind of understand how people are getting that impression, because I watched it give that impression to three other people sitting around me the night we watched the show for the first time. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
but
yeah.
it sucks because I don't think it's true after the first episode.
I mean, I don't even. I think like the opening scene is like slow in that it's like deliberately paced to create tension. But I think from there, like I feel like the tension is like immediately heightened, because this dude is responsible for two deaths, and then like every interaction, you have to like read carefully as you're watching, and like yeah, like plot wise he is just like going around and talking to people, like in an RPG or something, but there's so much like weight to those conversations. I feel like, and you're trying
Yeah,
to
but if
like
you
figure out if this is a person that can be trusted, or like how revealing should he be, kind of stuff, where I felt like that was immediately like really intense and like hard to keep track of in a way.
Yeah, I'm with you, but I'm just also like, I feel like if I put myself in the shoes of like audiences who don't care as much, or just people who have less of a taste for like character driven storytelling,
Yeah.
I can definitely see where people are coming from with the first one. You know, I think the first scene is the scene that's tense, and then after that, yes, you know he's in danger, but I don't know that the scenes are. I don't know that the way the story's being told makes you feel a lot of that danger, unless, like, if you're someone who's paying close attention, I think it does, but like it's not like anybody's ever about to come around the corner and he's about to get caught or something. It's just like, okay,
Hmm.
like, oh god, this guy killed some people, and like there's a bulletin out for his arrest. But once you get into the second and third episodes, there are things actually happening that make you feel tense, like he's going to get caught. But like, for instance, it's probably the second episode where Tim rats him out, right? Like, that that's a possibility in the first episode, but like you're not it like things actually start like the ball starts moving in terms of like things happening. I feel like in the second and third episode, where it's really not in the first one. So, um, you know, I definitely see how, especially if you're not like if you're a little bit on like I don't know, am I into this or am I not? I think it's a little bit of I can see where it's more of a struggle for people in the first episode, and it bums me out because I know after that, I think a lot of those people that they may lose in the first episode would be more likely to be into it after that, you know. So,
Yeah. I mean, I think the episodes get better. Um, but I don't think they like change the, you know, I don't think the show undergoes like a significant change um in 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 quality or anything. But I think
oh
like the maybe the story does get better
well,
because you're more is revealed and there there's more layers to it, like the tapestry is unfolding
yeah, it's
more.
not an issue of quality for me. In fact, I wouldn't even say it gets better, even though I mean I do like the second and third episodes more, I guess. But like I don't even think it gets better. In fact, I would almost go as far as to say that the first episode being a little slow is evidence of the quality of the show because they are willing to kind of
Mm.
like, you know, not just rush past all that stuff. And it to me it's proof of how character driven it is. You know, we will spend 30 minutes with Cassian as he as he sets this stuff up and like talks to these other
Mhm.
important people in his life and stuff. We will spend that time. I'm glad. And
Mhm.
I think it's
Mhm.
proof of how good the show is. I just also think it's a little bit of an obstacle to Philistines, you know? I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. Kind of.
No, I
Yeah.
mean, yep. It's definitely not everyone's preferred style of storytelling.
Yeah.
Um, but again, it kind of is mine. It's I think it's I don't think we need to go any more
No.
deeper into that. But I think the other thing, there's two more things on my notes to mention.
Okay.
One is the music.
Yep.
Just excellent music across the board. Some stuff is just kind of just background music at times and then there's like other parts where there when Bix is like running an errand and there's like this like cool electronic music which like yeah, we have electronic music in Star Wars now. That's pretty cool. Adds to the kind of the cyberpunk vibes in some ways. And then there is just some ridiculous percussion throughout. Just like some wild drums happening.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it's very very good stuff. I downloaded like the music sampler with like the themes. Like there were like 3 tracks put up on Apple Music, which I actually haven't listened to yet, but I am looking forward to getting like the full soundtrack and giving that a run through.
Yeah.
Last thing on my list is the word shit.
mm-hmm.
Um, because that someone says shit in Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that's the first time.
It probably is. Yeah, it probably is.
It
How do you
is.
feel about it?
I don't hate it. It's not something that like I was ever like, man, I really hope the next Star Wars movie has like tons of Sith and someone says the word shit.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
that's what I really want
Right, right.
out of it. Like um but no, I think in the context of the moment, I think it was the only word that would have worked.
Oh, you
I
don't
think
think
that
Poodoo would have had the same effect?
I was gonna say I think because I was thinking about this. I was like, oh, should they have used a an in universe term instead,
Yeah.
like an in universe cuss here,
Right. Right.
which is I've talked about it on the show, which this is a good time to bring this up. My favorite television show of all time is the reboot of Battlestar Galactica from the early 2000s.
Hmm.
It's just the most immersed I've ever been into a television show. I can like my wife was rewatching it a few years ago, and like I was like, oh, I'm not going to sit down for a rewatch. Anytime I would like walk in the room, I would end up like sitting down through like the rest of the episode, just because it just pulls me in so much. But in that show, they use frack, like it's their like in universe term for the f-bomb, so that they could like say it on TV and stuff. And um like it happens a ton, and like it's fine, it works. Star Wars, kind of has some of those I guess like cognates in their in universe language. But I think again, because of this show being what it is and how it is, like the I think shit was the appropriate term there. I think
Yeah.
that's just the way to go with that. And now shit is part of Star Wars.
Yeah. See, I'm indifferent towards its use. I think like I didn't even notice it in the moment, and I think it's just because it is like it just felt natural in that moment, so I didn't even think about it. Um, I guess the only thing that my thing would be like, okay, like let's not like we don't have to be all like canon about it. Okay, like maybe it's like in that show when that character said the word shit, that made sense. Like I know I think you're kind of kidding, but like I actually don't need it to be like, oh, now it's part of the vernacular of Star Wars. Like I can point to the proof, it was in that one episode of
hmm
that show. So
hmm
now we should have you know uh Chewbacca say that in a future Star Wars show, because like
uh-huh.
it's like we know that they know the word, we know they can say it. So like to me
Yeah.
it's like no, that's lame. Like I don't need there to be an official vocabulary of Star Wars, and once somebody says a word and one thing, like now we can use it whenever, and maybe
hmm
we should, because it's like it's like it's a fact now or whatever. It's like I think like let's look at it as art and say that in this show the writer and the actor delivered that line and it made sense for the show, and it doesn't have to be like a piece of trivia or lore or something that can now be part of the playbook just because of that.
So like not like the way Han Solo canonized hell, um, the existence of the underworld in Empire Strikes Back,
No,
which
it's exactly like that. It's exactly like that. And
yeah,
because until like people on the internet started being like, "Did you know that the word hell is used X amount of times in Star Wars?" I never even thought about it. I never thought
hmm
about it. So, I think like the litmus test should be like, does the line work in the moment? Does it
hmm
feel when he's like, "I'll see you in hell"? It's like, well, first off, it doesn't sound like that. He delivered it way better. But when he says that, I was just like, got chills, and I was like, yes, that moment was awesome. Like, if he had
yeah,
said, "I'll see you in," whatever the Star Wars, I'll see you in Mustafar. I'll see you in the volcanic lava rivers of Mustafar. Like,
yep,
no, that would
yep,
suck. But it also
and
doesn't mean I want everybody saying hell all the time, just for,
hmm
and hell is used multiple times, I think, but who cares?
yeah.
I don't care.
I
So,
think it's interesting. I care like slightly.
well, it's interesting
And
to talk about. What I'm saying is like, I don't care like on an emotional level, like I'm mad or happy about it. I'm just like,
yeah,
if it worked, cool. If it didn't, then don't do it.
yeah. I think there's a South Park episode where they celebrate being able to say shit on Comedy Central, and like they make it
Mm.
a whole thing. Um also there was a long running joke that Chuck Taylor, had always wanted to say shit on TBS, and never got an opportunity to.
That's weird because they say words all the time on TBS that I think are way worse than that, you know? And there's the B word in wrestling. I actually roll my eyes almost every single time. I can't
Ooh,
stand it. But like in wrestling, in both AEW and WWE, like
yeah,
it's always like this like mic drop moment. Like, did you, he finished that promo by saying the B word at the other person. And I'm just like,
yeah,
God, it's such cheap. Like, it's such a, like a
yeah.
boring,
I
like
don't
to
love
me.
that one.
But the crowd is always like, oh my god, they went there, they went there. I'm like,
Yeah,
they go there like 3 times a month, like sometimes
yeah,
multiple times in the same show. It's not like I don't know, I don't care. All
yeah.
right, we're running long though, so let me just say I got one more thing that I want to talk about,
Okay,
which is just,
okay.
and I already brought it up, but just the last 10 or 15 minutes of this show is so incredible to me. The way that both the present day story and the flashback come together, the way that the music builds in that moment. I was like, it's not even like that complicated of a thing, but my mind was exploding watching the final moments of the show where we're seeing young Cassian take his first journey into space. Meanwhile, older Cassian is like leaving with Luthen, and cutting back and forth between those things seamlessly was brilliant. And also, the show is about these people, right? It's about these characters. And that show or that episode wraps up with that whole kind of final sequence, but we get like long lingering shots on the faces of the people in this show. We get one on Cyril, is that his name? Cyril Karn,
Mhm,
the main bad guy,
mhm. Yeah, yeah.
the Primor devotee. We get one with him. We get one with Marva. We get one with Bix. We get one with Brasso. Who very much
Yeah.
plays the Ben Affleck. Very much plays the Ben Affleck Goodwill Hunting role. You get that shot where like Ben Affleck's like,
Mhm,
"Oh yeah, Matt Damon, he took off, man. I always said I'd be happy one day if he didn't show up to work, and this is that day. He didn't
mhm,
show up." Like you got that
mhm.
scene, that Matt Damon scene or a Ben Affleck scene. And yeah, I'm probably forgetting a character or two, but they give you
Yeah.
those shots of those characters. Then it all builds towards that really brilliant sequence with Cassian, both in his youth and present day, leaving on a journey, right? And I was like,
Mm,
this is so
man.
well done, so thoughtful, so well executed. It's incredible. So yeah, I'm so excited for the next couple of for the rest of the show, but I'm really excited to
Mhm,
see like what this next episode brings, because I feel like we got 3 episodes of one flavor of this show of Andor, you know.
mhm.
Um and I'm really excited to spend more time with all of these characters who I'm growing to love, but I'm also like thrilled that we're going to get Mon Mothma, and we're going to be, kind of going into the larger Star Wars galaxy or universe with future episodes, and see how that all kind of ties together um, with the show. So yeah, I can't wait.
Yep, yep.
Cool. All right. Until we come back next week with an episode about the 4th episode of Andor, you can find all the things we do at blockaderunnerpodcast.com. If you want to reach out to the show and tell us what you think about Andor, or remind us of stuff that we forgot to touch on, that would be great. And you can email the show, blockaderunnerpodcast@gmail.com, or message the show at Blockade Run on Twitter, and follow us on Twitter. And Ryan, you're on Twitter at.
Vaymalay, Vaymalay.
All right. So thanks so much for listening, and we'll be back soon with another episode of the Blockade Runner podcast.
We are all the Republic.